I'll be honest, I'm still not feeling that great. I've been sick for 9 days now. Uh, I don't know who got me sick. When you have kids, they have these little germs that you think are just adorable germs. They're not adorable. They're grown ass adult kick you in the face germs. I don't want to talk too long on this one. I do want to say though, we're on episode 18 right now. I really appreciate everybody watching. I could kind of use your help. I just had to turn down a guest because of it was a 2-hour trip to get to him. 2 hours there, 2 hours back. I really wanted to talk to this person, but I didn't have the gas money. Go to my YouTube channel. In the links right up under the title, you'll see a PayPal that goes right to me. That's what that fund is for, getting the guests, so they can get their stories to you. I hate to ask for that, but it is what it is, you know? Anyway, episode 18 is with Angie Shy. I really enjoyed talking to Angie. Her energy filled this studio with so much happiness and motivation. It was just a joy to speak with her, and I think this is going to bleed over into, when I was editing it, I'm like, man, I still feel that energy, so I hope you do too. I'm going back to bed. Here's episode 18 with Angie Shy.
Bring back that feeling I used to get when I was just a kid. The one I knew before I ever worried about the bullshit surrounding all my thoughts and bust that rolls through my life. To the rain from my brain and finally I'm feeling like a hand in my pocket and a baggie in my hand. Pull out a few buds of the super goddamn. Look at my hand, it's just a green, the paper's just a cool screen. My body's so packed,
Everything kind of like just lined up perfectly. All the stars lined up. And I'll be honest with you, ever since I met my wife, all the stars have been naturally aligning. Like everything has been, I don't know where I would have been without it. I don't want to think about it.
Doesn't make any sense.
Doesn't make any sense. So
universe provides. I come to find, as I get my, I want to say get my shit together, get rid of my shit and start on my deal. And I'm still waiting. I'll definitely talk about it in the process, but I'm very attached to the universe, and I feel like, the stars, I'm conspiring with it now, whereas I used to definitely conspire against whatever was trying to work in my favor. I think I was like, fuck that. I want my plan. I got things the way I want them to be. I want to be doing what I want people to be doing, what I want them to do. This is my, about 5 years ago, well into recovery, life fell apart. And I really let go.
yeah,
And since, these last 3 years since I've been in Wilmington have been pretty spectacular.
that's good.
And life looks nothing like I would have ever chosen for myself.
It's crazy how that happens, isn't it? Like it's you have a path, you have your goals, you have your passions, and whether it's trauma or what, it's just so lovely to hear when the right things happen for the right people to bring the happiness they deserve.
Although like I said, it just took divorce, losing my house, moving from my home place, like everything went away. I'm like,
You're here, sister. Same thing. Yeah.
All right. I'm ready. And it's been this incredible ride that's come through without recovery as my baseline and foundation. I could never have made it. And that was well after I began my journey. I started the journey of recovery, had no idea of what I'll say it was prepping me for.
What's your sober date?
June 6, 2002 is...
Girl!
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I just celebrated 22 years. I celebrated at the Sphere.
Yeah.
For Dead and Company.
Mostly alcohol?
No. I put the drink down. Last drink was actually December 19th of 2000. Took me a couple of years. I put the drink down before June 6th of that year, but I keep that. That was like my first date.
Yeah.
The husband and I, eventually became the husband. And I then put down, in all honesty, I held on to the weed for 16 years.
Right.
And in that time frame, I put down a lot of other stuff. So there's been like no drink, 22 years, probably no recreational drugs of any kind, 15 years or so. And then the weed's been 6 years, I think, was this summer.
Yeah.
So
if you had to guess, what was the substance that was making life unmanageable?
the drink.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same for me. Yeah. It was, were you like, were you a wine, liquor?
Bud Light.
Bud Light?
Bud Light. She was the queen.
Man, swamp water light.
Easy to go down,
Yeah.
I mean, it was, I drank pretty much everything. And my drinking was, I lived in Colorado for 27 years.
Okay.
And I grew up in upstate New York. I heard you guys talking about living in a small town. I graduated as well with like 110 people. That was 2 schools put together. We merged with our rivals in 10th grade. So I had 50 people prior to that. My drinking began like 16. A friend and I split a liter of Southern Comfort in an hour. And I was like, I'd found my solution to, vomit it all over everything. My first amends, little did I know, like that was, my first, would eventually become my first amends making area. But I wasn't a real big whiskey, whatever. I drank whatever was easy. Wine coolers. We drank a lot of box wine back in the day. Matilda Bay. But I drank whatever. Drank my share of Jägermeister and Goldschlager and Grand Marnier and lots of high-end wine. I've been in the restaurant service for 35 years. But when it came down to it, it was like, Bud Light goes down smooth.
Yeah. Mine was beer, but I couldn't get drunk off of it towards the end. And then, but my end, I think, was the one that really, because I was weird, man. I could drink beer like PBR or some good, like amber all day long. Heffenweizen, I liked. Even the high alcohol tents. I would get buzzed and stuff, but I wouldn't get hammered. When I started mixing in the liquor, like scotch, I loved it, but it was a sipping thing. I wouldn't get drunk off of it. But let me tell you, I got that basic white girl side of me in there with the white wine and ice cubes.
Oh, tasty.
Oh, man. And I'm talking like those $4 huge bottles of like white tail or whatever.
Right.
Man, I would go through like 4 of those a day. And that's what would black me out. Like, it wasn't the beer. Liquor, but it was the white wine and stuff. Like, even today, like, beer isn't really a thing for me. Like, after I cut the grass, like, there's, like, NA beers out there that I don't recommend. Like, I've always said when I bring this up, like, people are different. You got to do what's working for you. Don't listen to somebody and be like, oh, I can do that. Like I just knew at the point after my daughter was like 2, I'm like, I'm not going back to that. Yeah. Like, and then I went to a place, everybody was hammered. I'm like, I hate this so much. And they had like a NA Sam Adams. It's like the basically like a Blue Moon. And I was like, okay, this is tasty. And then I drank like half of it, put it down. And then one day, cutting the grass, I'm like, you know what? This is where I miss a beer. And I'm like, oh, I still got one of them NAs. I drank it there. And I'm like, it's like every now and then thing. I think it was the pills that had me, because I was on a very, very high dose of Metadate CD, which is like Adderall on crack.
Okay.
And benzos. Like, they had me on the trifecta. So, that's kind of why I don't really take ADHD stuff, like an Adderall type now. I just started like a year and a half ago again, because my wife got tired of 20 projects being started and never finished, and now it's like I'm completing things and I can have a conversation. But like antidepressants, things like that, I just can't do. Like, they take me to dark places.
I never took them.
Yeah.
I never took them. I will say I stuck with the weed.
Yeah.
In all honesty, so December 19th of 2000 was my last drunk. A lot of stuff had led up to that. I actually had gotten into, in order to keep my crappy job at the ski shop, I tell a story all the time. That's what initially threw me into my first experience with, quote, sobriety. I lived in Vail for, like I said, that area between Vail, Beaver Creek, Colorado. And I had a crappy job at the ski shop, and it came with a keg. I really didn't know anything about alcoholism. I didn't know anything. My mother's whole side of the family is literally dead from the disease.
Yeah. Dad's
family, whatever. It runs rampant everywhere. I think unwellness and mental health issues equally. But so in order to keep that job, I had to do something. So I put myself into this 12-week outpatient program. Lasted 2 weeks. I went out on St. Patrick's Day, literally, and Green Bear was calling. But I went to my first meeting in that time period and really became aware of the fellowship, I'll say. I went back out for many, many years. Then came the next time that I decided I was going to, my drug-addicted, drug-dealing boyfriend had kicked me out of the house 4 days before Christmas. And I finally had to look at my stuff and thought, maybe Angie has a drinking problem. If he's going to kick me out, I might want to look at that. And sorry if you're watching this by any chance. But that I kind of then went back into the whole, I'll say, decided I was going to do something about it. I wanted back that crappy life, in all honesty. I didn't really know anything different. I lived in this tiny town in Red Cliff, 365 people, the original county seat of Colorado, Red Cliff. I loved it. But I moved in with a friend, or stayed with a friend for a couple weeks, and then I moved into, I call it the commune of Red Cliff. I moved in with like 5 raging alcoholic men and their 5 unneutered dogs, and they loved me. They welcomed me in, and I began my journey at that point. I definitely, we had a lot of things going on in the house, but I kept the drink down. I was sad. I used to walk up the street and throw rocks at his window. The old boyfriend, please let me in. And then it was a year to the day. I'll never forget, December 19th of 2000, last drunk. December 19th. And this was an unpoliced community also. So that last drunk, if the cops could have been called, they would have been. But the last person to be executed in the state of Colorado had killed a police officer in Red Cliff many years before. So there's no police. Nothing, nothing happened with that. Anyway, December 19th of 2002, I guess it would be, he called me for a booty call. And I said no. And I had been doing some recovery-based stuff in the process.
You.
Absolutely. Life had changed. I decided.
Good for you.
Yeah, you betcha, because that was a big part of my deal. Yeah. Looking for love, looking for validation. Now on this journey, which has been, I call it my journey of recovery and self-discovery. It's the greatest thing I've ever done for Angie, and it's definitely a public service, for everybody else in the world. My not drinking and using is a plus. But I did hold on to the weed. I personally, I don't have a problem with that.
I don't. I honestly, and we were talking a little bit about this before, but it's in early recovery. I thought, and I do recommend to anybody in early recovery, you leave everything out. You got to do what you got to do. You got to find what works for you, but you can't leave things in. In my opinion, you can't leave things in and find what works for you because you've not gotten rid of everything, but in my opinion, weed should be legal. I don't have a problem with it. I don't care. I mean, do I think, if I were to find out my kid was smoking weed, the 14-year-old, no, I'd be pissed. But the 16-year-old, I'm like, that's about the age you start experimenting. But I would educate them about it. Hey, this is a medicinal thing. You don't need to run around with your homies in a 1997 Champagne Nissan Sentra in the walking parking lot smoking blunts. Right. That's stupid. That's not how you use that. This is something that Mother Earth gave us, and it needs to be respected. And so I when I hear people saying that they self-medicate with it and they're sober and they're clean, that's fine with me. It's acceptable. Now, if they're high 24 hours a day and can't do anything without it, then it's a substitute. See what I'm saying? There's a
very gray area in there with all the stuff. So I know that also part of my deal, I had a old relationship, and we would do some drugstore cowboy runs. So there were a lot of pharmaceuticals that were mixed in with my deal as well.
Yeah.
I put down pretty much everything. I had this desire for straight edge or whatever that was. I had a desire to be for full sobriety, whatever that was. I didn't know anything about anything at that point.
Yeah.
And so getting into, I did find myself back in 12-step area. That's really been my foundation.
Yeah.
I am so grateful for all of that stuff. That being said, I have really had to kind of keep coming back to Angie. I don't want to say Angie's plan, Angie's program.
You have to be selfish.
But a big part of my journey has been kind of taking what I like and leave the rest. I don't have a perfect story. I've struggled with sponsorship. That has not been a part of my story. I've tried. I don't have. I judge myself. I've judged myself harshly.
Yeah.
I'm also, I guess, my ego can come out and be like, most of the people don't have what I want, So I'm not a mom. I'm not a college graduate. I don't have. It took me a long time to get married. I would kind of put myself in this terminal, unique place.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I've come to understand that my story is my story. Other people have a perfect, or they have a different experience that's worked for them. So I have used what I can and come to understand that it's my journey. Yeah. And that's been pretty wonderful. The time came eventually. I did get married. I did marry somebody. I don't think he'll be watching. Maybe some of the family will, but who also had a drinking problem.
Right.
And I knew that kind of from the beginning. I was married for 10 years, but we were together for 17. And then we lived together for a year after the divorce. Oof, yeah. Thank goodness for sobriety.
Oh, that's...
And actually I'll say my last drink was the night that I took him home.
Yeah.
So through all of my journey of sobriety, he was on his. We worked together for a long time, had a very great life. I don't regret one bit of it, even as hellacious as it was in that last year during COVID.
I bet.
But without... the recovery is my basis, it would have been a lot worse. And I eventually found some people who came into my life. That is when I finally started to see a therapist.
Mm-hmm. Therapy.
Man,
go to therapy.
Exactly. I
go
love it.
to therapy. So much can happen. And look, sorry, Howard, if you're watching this ever, I doubt you are. You're 90 years old. My guy doesn't even tell me how to fix things. He says nothing. I sit there and just vomit words, and then by the end of it, I'm like, wait a minute, but this doesn't mean because of this. Thank you. And he's like, right. I'm like, great. But therapy, man, it's so great.
It is. It's wonderful. The first session, these two people came into my life when I was ready. I love the spiritual part of the journey. I really have been growing a relationship with the higher power without getting, that's been at the forefront of my deal, something to turn to. My drinking days are done. My drink card is full. My quitter's broken. That's sort of been my focus through all of it. I do not want to go back to the old life. So I decided to embrace this other stuff as much as I could. So well into the deal, it was about 16 years. These two people came in. I finally started seeing this guy. I'll never forget, therapist seeing. He said to me on our first session, he said, so do you want to look at the weed or do you want to look at the marriage? And I was like, well, I'm pretty sure the marriage is fucked, so let's look at the weed. And from that moment on, he gave me a few tools that day. I put the weed down. And about, 2 weeks later, I moved downstairs in my house. About 2 weeks later, I filed for divorce. All these things that I was very afraid of doing prior to. Everything came at its own time. And I wasn't ready until I was ready. I suppose like that's been
for the divorce or for the
that
sobriety?
For the move. No, for the divorce.
So you've been sober at this point.
I had been not drinking. I had not had any booze, and I also, as mentioned, I never took any antidepressants.
Yeah.
I didn't take any pharmaceuticals. I had delved into that stuff. I didn't want to use anything else.
Right.
So at this point, I was finally ready. I kind of knew. I knew quite early on in my deal that if I stopped smoking weed, I was going to get divorced.
Right.
And I was more afraid of getting divorced than I was of holding on to that piece. You know, with recovery, with a basis of it, I finally got ready to do other stuff when I was ready. And that's usually what I'll talk about if I talk about recovery, is that there is no perfect plan. Everybody's experience is different. That's not to say that I couldn't have put it down earlier, but as we mentioned, I can't go back and think about I could have done or should have done this. This is the way my deal has worked, and I think it played out perfectly. You know, when it finally came time, I did move downstairs. I started packing my stuff up. I shipped a whole crate of things to North Carolina a year and a half before I even moved. I thought I was going to be leaving a lot sooner, but
right.
Now
with the divorce, and this is something that I've actually been asked before on not on the show, but email questions. So with the divorce, did you, because this is how I was with it, because I was married once before too, I knew it was over way before the divorce, but it was more of I didn't want to get rid of the comforts and the freedoms that were there, even though I knew this is only going to get worse. Like it was her that finally said, look, I can't do this anymore. And I'm like, no, I'm going to fight for it. But in my head, I'm going, you're just saying this because you feel like you have to. Like, you know, it's over. But for you, was it more the things that you really did want everything that came with it to fix it? Or did you know previous that it was before, but it was more of like a obligation to stay and make things work?
I have parents who've been married for 56 years as of this last August.
Nice.
He had family his parents had been married also for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
I knew that we were troubled. We lived very different lifestyles. Big part of it was my sobriety, and that really became the forefront of my stuff. So I knew we were not moving in the same direction.
Yeah.
We each had a lot of love for each other. I did the best that I could until I could not do it anymore. And I really realized, for me, once again, it was putting the weed down. There was no buffer anymore. I didn't have that buffer.
Yeah.
And so I approached him and I won't call them ultimatums because that wasn't what it was out of, but I asked for two things. I said, you got to quit drinking and we need to go to marriage counseling if this is going to work. And he said no. My heart broke into like a bazillion little pieces, but I had all my tools. I thought I was, who knows, quitting and getting on the path of sobriety for lots of other reasons. And here I was 18 years later, needing every tool I had. You know, I never thought about drinking or using during that process, I will say. But I knew, and I had actually been sleeping on the couch for a while, so I did know that it was coming to an end for long before it happened. But I didn't want to feel the feelings. I didn't want to pack my shit up. Right. I didn't want to go through any of that. I didn't want to lose the house. I definitely did not want to leave Colorado. Yeah. I mean, everything was crumbling down, and that's when it came, so for me, a big part of my journey really is that spiritual piece and the connection with the higher power, because I needed something to turn to help me do what I did not want to do. I tried to keep the house. We were like the War of the Roses. I put the for sale sign out. He'd take it down.
I forgot about that amazing movie. Oh my gosh. War of the Roses, War of the Roses, War of the Roses. I'm saying this so I remember later when I'm watching this to remind my wife, hey, have you seen this movie? Because she didn't watch movies growing up. So I'm getting introduced to all these cinema classics. And sorry, you just got me so excited bringing up that movie.
It was. I mean, I was able to laugh at it too because that was us. He would put it up. I would take it down. It was this nightmare. And the house was all we had. So I knew, I'm like, I can't leave until the house is sold. It's the money that I have,
Yeah.
you know, and I tried to buy it. I tried to do all of this stuff. And as I mentioned earlier, like, universe was not conspiring with me in regards to wanting what I wanted. I didn't want the marriage to end. We were very different, but I really was willing to compromise and keep this comfort, this life, whatever I had invested into it at this point. I was willing and would have stuck it out if he had been willing to do a little bit of work. Today, many years later, many years, I'll be divorced 4 years this December, and I've been here for 3 years. I wouldn't change one bit.
Yeah.
Like, my life this last 3 years has been about, like, finding Angie again. I'm a huge live music fan.
Yeah.
I've been to New Orleans 3 times for Jazz Fest in the last 3 years.
Ooh, that's a bucket list item of mine.
Oh my gosh, I could never go there if I was still drinking and using. I'd have been dead shortly after I got off the plane. It's been incredible. I just went back to Colorado for the summer. I called it my summer tour of 2024. I saw 20 plus concerts in 3 months on top of working. I worked my ass off. While I went back to Eagle, they have me work, so it's really nice. I'm heading to LA next week for a concert, and super excited about it.
Very cool. That's
I've
the
done
one thing I haven't been able to do since being sober. Is go back to a live show. Oh, excuse me. I can go here in town to see friends play. Mm-hmm. I have family in the music industry, and I took my 14-year-old to his first rock show at House of Blues to meet, like, his cousin and meet the band, and it was fun.
Yeah.
But, like, that was, like, my, because I played in bands. Like, I did that lifestyle. Like, I toured with bands, and I can't. It's like the one thing that I don't have any, like, Rage Against the Machine just had, like, a reunion tour. One of my favorite bands of all time. And I've never seen them live, and I couldn't make myself go. I mean, for one, I didn't have the $2,000 for a ticket, but I couldn't make myself go because I'm like, I don't want to. It's weird.
I will say I stayed out there, drinking and drugging for a really long time because I thought I'd never get to see live music again. Mm-hmm. I am a huge live music fan. Grew up in upstate New York near SPAC. I don't know if you're familiar with that. SPAC, great outdoor amphitheater. Mm-hmm. I saw so much music back then, not all of which I really remember.
Right.
But I saw a ton of music, and I just could not imagine not going to live music, and I couldn't imagine going sober. And I remember, actually, my first concert after I'd quit drinking, I went to see Maceo Parker, who I believe, if I'm not mistaken, old trumpet player, old trumpet player. And it was a real big moment. I mean, I went with friends of mine. I went with friends of mine. They made it very easy. Now, they were all drinking and whatever, but I will say having the support of maybe the fellowship has been paramount for me to have a community to be able to talk about that kind of stuff. But I also I have what I'll call the gift of desperation. Like, drinking is not an option for me anymore. And I eventually found that not going to see live music was not an option for me anymore. But the time that I was married, I really didn't go see much. We had a house, we were very busy, we had dogs, we had a pretty full life. And I removed that piece. I did go see some stuff, but now that I've been here, I've been to see just about everything. And at most of the venues, you'll find there's the gateway table, there's always some sort of sober community within the stuff. And even at Jazz Fest, they've started, so there's a group called 1 Million Strong, I think, that now has a booth in Jazz Fest that's a little sober section. And that, to me, has, so you can meet up with people and you kind of have a place to connect. But I've always been reminded, it's like wherever I go, there I am. And I definitely didn't get sober to make my life small. So live music, and I find it funny, I'm talking about higher power stuff, giving back, sharing whatever fucking message I have to share.
Right.
Every concert I go to, pretty much, except I just went to see Leftover Salmon the other night at Bowstrings Brew Yard here in Wilmington.
Never heard of either one of them.
Oh, Leftover Salmons. So they're a great old jam band. They've been around for 25, 30 years. Okay. They're fantastic. So I went to see them. It was my brother's birthday. I didn't talk to anybody that night, but almost every concert I go to, I end up talking to somebody about sobriety. Never fails. Either somebody offers me a drink and I say I don't drink anymore. Next thing you know, I'm talking about recovery. It's funny to me, which I say the universe conspires with me. I used to think if I quit drinking, I was going to have to fucking join the convent, or I was going to have to be handing out flowers somewhere. I was going to have to give up all this stuff. And I'm like, nope. It ends up that I get to put myself right in the element that is soul filling for me, which is especially live music. I said this concert I'm going to next week I just bought myself one ticket. It's like a celebration for Robbie Robertson, Life is a Carnival. He was the lead singer of the band. And so it's at the Forum. I bought myself these days, not drinking or using. I have some money.
How the fuck did you do that?
We have 15th row. I'm on the floor. It's great. And I'm excited. I have, 3 days in LA. I don't have to worry about getting lost on the way there, passing out in the parking lot. You only go home with a stranger if you want to.
Right.
And so life is, life is pretty spectacular.
It's great how it gets to that point after those years of, once some scars heal, once some time passes, once some community is made and you realize what sobriety can be, on how carefree and happy life is.
It is. I will say there's a lot. I personally have had to do a lot of work. I worked the steps.
Did you?
Did that stuff. Yeah. Many times. I love the process. In all honesty, as mentioned, and I know there's anonymity behind, and so I'm not going to name my particular program.
Right.
I'm a part of a couple 12-step fellowships.
Yeah.
But I didn't have the sponsorship deal, so I found my way to work them in workshops and get it done. And that part, it's such a spiritual process. That's been life-changing for me. I tie that in with the therapist. I listen to a ton of literature. I have two main spiritual teachers that I listen to on a pretty regular basis, Michael Singer and Pema Chodron.
I know, I've heard of Michael Singer.
He's great, The Untethered Soul, and I listen to him pretty constantly, all about releasing energy, whatever. I just want to be the freest Angie I can be. I don't want to carry any old shit. I don't want anything blocking my Shakti, whatever. And I'm not a big, into all that stuff, but that's been life-changing for me, adding to this spiritual journey. And just kind of going into it, because so when I was turning 50.
You ain't 50.
I know, I'm 53.
You're not 50. You're not 50.
I am.
Girl,
happy.
you're taking care of yourself.
It's that 22 years of getting rid of it, and good genes,
Yeah, there you go. But, all right.
So I was turning 50. The marriage was dying. The marriage had really died. It was the darkest time in my life. Long after my bottom as far as drinking and using. Yeah. I was living in Colorado still. I did not know what to do. I ended up, I had a friend who was also kind of in recovery. We knew each other for a long time. He was dealing with some serious like suicidal ideation. He had found an outside treatment that he was using, and he had given me a couple suggestions. So at 50, we had already been divorced, the ex-husband and I. We were living together. We lived together for a year after. It was not pretty. It was not pretty.
Yeah,
it was pretty.
I've been there. I get it.
Yeah, it was hellacious. So I wouldn't have called myself suicidal, really. I wasn't looking to remove myself from the planet, but I was calling the suicide hotline. Yeah. I needed somebody to talk to in addition to my stuff. Mm-hmm. I found this, I was definitely depressed. I would not have called myself depressed, really. I just blamed it on the marriage and the dying and the darkness. And after talking to my doctor and doing quite a bit of my own stuff, it was suggested, and I was heavily supported to embark on the ketamine infusion journey. That's been life-changing and life-saving for me. And I say that only because everyone has their different journey to finding their way to wellness. Yeah. That has been a huge part of mine. It's really helped kind of catapult me into, seriously helped with my depression. Yeah. It's seriously helped with my, ruminating. There's a lot of things that it's done for me. But I added that in, and I left Colorado shortly after that, December 19th of which is funny, that being my last drunk day, December 19th of 2021, I think it was, I left Colorado. I'll never forget, I was sitting on the side of the highway because I wasn't sure. I didn't want to leave. I didn't want to let go of any of this stuff and wasn't thinking of drinking or using. That's really long past. I am, I'm an alcoholic drug addict who still has, still thinks about things every now and then, but it's more of a thought than, there's a lot of space between the thought and the action. But when I got in the car, I was sitting on I-70, the corner of either take a left and go back to Eagle or take that right and drive to Carolina. And I sat there, I talked to the universe, I talked to a couple other people, and then I took that right and headed to Carolina. And, I'm here living with mom and dad. Life has never been so good.
Yeah.
I swear. I never thought this is the way my life would be. This is where I'd be. And it's better than I ever could have put together myself.
It's amazing on how, you grow up and you're like, I can't wait to move out of my house. I can't wait to get out. And I was like that. Like, I was like, I didn't give a shit if I lived in somebody's cat's litter box. I wanted to move out of my parents' house. And now I'm like, like my mom has terminal leukemia. So it's like, and my dad turns 80 this month. So it's like, I could never give mom the care if something happened, vice versa. But I would have like a parent live with me. If I didn't have the kid, like, when mom was in treatment, I would go and stay at their house for like a week at a time. Like now they're like friends and it's fucking weird. It's weird on how, anyway, I digress. I have a question. So, and this is important and it's, again, I don't want anyone to say, ooh, I've never heard of that. I'm going to go do that. But I agree with you. If you don't have healthy mind, a healthy head, if your mental health is struggling, there's way more obstacles that are just unnecessary. So mental health being the most important thing. I think
Absolutely.
About anything, any situation, marriage, relationships, recovery, what the fuck you want to eat for lunch?
Absolutely.
Like anything, mental health is everything. That's why I say you have to do what you have to do to protect your mental health. Because without that, you're shit.
Agreed.
So I'm glad you did find that you could add into, and that's been working beautifully for you.
It has, and touching on mental health, I will say prior to my getting into the 12-step area, I didn't know anything about mental wellness. I didn't know anything about recovery. I didn't know anything about any of that stuff. I was just like, I think a good portion of the population on the planet going through life, doing my thing, coping to the best of my ability. And then I was presented with these ideas of, maybe I had a part in my messy life. There was a part where my ego was, squelched, and it was very painful to think about what I had done. But that was so short in comparison to the benefits of taking ownership of my deal. I too had experiences that took place very early on in life. I was victimized. I didn't know how to look at that. So here I am, late 20s. I was 29 when I, 29, 32 maybe when I finally decided to put the drink down for good. But prior to that, I had no tools. So when I put what they say, the drink and the drugs are but a symptom of the other stuff.
Yeah.
So you put that stuff down, and then there's just this fucking mess that's like, what am I going to do with all this stuff? I don't know.
Whoa, where'd that come from?
My thinking is definitely, I got a thinking problem now. And that's been the journey for me to find a way to mental wellness. Some people, I also found, some people do want to maybe just take the pill, and I'm not here to judge anybody. You take the pill, you do whatever it is, but I have found it is the underlying work in addition to, like, I don't want to be on a pill forever. I don't want to have to take something forever. I want to be free and clear and walking through this life to the best of my ability. I'm an eater. I'll say at this state in my life, my biggest thing right now is food, probably the final frontier.
Yeah.
And I'm fine with that. But adding this piece for me, I looked into it. I did talk to my doctor. I go to a clinical setting here. So in Colorado, I went to High Country Wellness and Infusion, I think was the name of the clinic. And I love her. I went back this summer. I had 3 sessions while I was there, once every month. I go to a clinic here in Myrtle Beach in South Carolina. It's doing something for me for sure that is changing, that's adding to or benefiting my mental wellness. I can't express that enough. I've never felt so balanced. I do believe that it's not a cure-all, fix-all, but I think for some people, it's beneficial. Everyone, people find their stuff, they figure out what works, and I feel like, once again, part of my journey, not judging Angie's messy path, that I have a message to share with some people that this might work for you.
Yeah.
It's worked for me. I'm certainly not advocating, within, let's say, the rooms of fellowship stuff. I've been judged. I've been called out. I did smoke weed for a long time. I didn't do the process the way everybody else does it. Everybody does it differently. And, I just find so today I sit here like the lightest, healthiest version of myself that there's ever been. And each day I feel like I get into that. I'm like, what other people think of me is none of my business. It's one of the greatest pieces of advice I've been given. And somebody who gave that to me did not like me very much. And I have run with that, as you've mentioned. And I do just want to touch on it from the perspective of, let's say, recovery. One of the best parts of it is being available. So I am with my parents right now. It's pretty cool. They're helping. They definitely took me in. I did not expect to stay here.
Right.
I came. I was going to get a little bit of reprieve for a little bit of time.
They love it.
They do.
They
well,
fucking love it.
I'm like, I feel like sometimes, they have been married for 56 years. So the kids, my brother also lives there too. Okay. So the whole family unit is together right now.
They are in heaven.
It's wonderful. It's not lost on me what a gift it is that I do get to be available. It's funny. I'll laugh. I'm just going to tell this story because, once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic. I feel like, so I go into the house one day and there's this bottle of Grand Marnier on the counter and the cork is like flush. My parents really don't drink. My dad will drink whatever. They've got their stuff going on. Mom doesn't drink for the most part at all. Wine cooler with some seltzer in it.
Right.
I'm like, what is that? So I see this bottle of Grand Marnier on the counter, and I asked her, I was like, what is that about? And she said, oh, somebody gave it to me for free at a garage sale, and the cork is broken. You can't even get into it. I was like...
Watch the magic witch's eye.
Like, the cork doesn't have anything to do with anything. Now, I haven't had a drink in 22 years, and I don't want it. I don't crave it, but I was like, please, can we put the Grand Marnier someplace else with the broken cork that nobody is drinking here?
Yeah, the cork doesn't mean nothing. Like, watch these skills, Mom.
Exactly, just to show you. So I am in my parents' house. I understand that it's not my house.
Yeah.
I don't know how long I'll live there. I joke, and I said I went back to Colorado, worked for 3 months. I'm taking these trips. I'm going places. I'm doing a lot of things. I haven't really touched on it too much, but I started my own podcast.
Yeah.
It's called Life, Love, Music, and Space Travel.
Oh, I like that title.
I'll say the space travel component really is a mix of spiritual experience,
right,
but it's also where I find, the ketamine infusions come into play, because I do leave the planet for about 45 minutes.
Right.
And that's my space travel piece for sure. But the podcast has been super cathartic. I'm going back to Florida for a podcast convention, and they are allowing me the space to continue recovering. The divorce, the ending of that was the darkest time of my life. Even when things were terrible, it is not the way I wanted things to go. I just find that that's a big part of the earthly experience, is getting through the stuff, coming out on the other side. And, I don't want to be resentful to him. I don't want to be mad at him. I don't want to harbor anger or anything. I'm like, the truth is, I've never had it so good.
Yeah.
Have it today. I'm pretty sure there'll be a home cooked meal when I get home. Mom will have cooked something.
I miss that so
for me.
much, man.
Yeah, it's it's pretty special.
I think, and I'm glad you found that creative outlet for the podcast, because it is, like I've said it many times on here, I started this because I felt like I was not doing anything for my recovery or not giving back to other people, and I had the tech know-how, and I had just kind of decided after 13 years of being very good at stand-up that I didn't want to fucking do it anymore. It's just too much. It's bad for my mental health. So once again, I used humility as a strength, was self-aware that my mental health was being affected by this, and it didn't matter what other people thought. It wasn't about the ego performer side saying, but they're going to forget about you. Like, fuck them.
Right.
Like, what do they do for me on a daily basis? And this has been so good for me. Not only have I met amazing people like yourself, but I've heard the different ways that have made me feel better about how I've done my recovery, because there's also been guilt in that. I didn't do a sponsor. I haven't done the 12 steps. Now, I do believe after the 16 episodes and hearing people that have done the steps, I would probably have a little bit of anger gone from my soul if I did do them. But I'm not ready. I'm still, that part of me not getting out of my own way is not there yet. But the creative outlet has been a magical thing for this, and I'm sure yours has been for you too. And you can download yours everywhere.
Yep, it's on all the streaming platforms.
All right, you'll have to text me the link, and I'll make sure to post it up on there. So I have 3 questions for you. I asked these 3 questions to everybody. You're actually the first one that's getting this question, second one that's getting this question.
Okay.
No, I know the concerts, traveling, live music, the podcast, but what in your sober or clean time or whatever the hell we call it, I think sober and clean time are the same thing, but whatever. It's about whatever. What is one thing that you have realized that whenever you get in your head or whenever something happens that you have found like a task, a hobby, a passion that you have kind of put your heart into, that you know that you can just get away and be able to analyze what's going around you, work through stuff? What is one thing that you picked up that you don't think you ever would have done? You obviously can tell I've never fucking asked this question before, because I don't know what the fuck I'm saying right now. Edit. What? No, I'm saying what is one thing that you found that you really love that helps you cope if you're ever having any sort of struggle?
So I will say one of the biggest things that I've added to my life most recently within the last year, seriously, is meditation.
Oh.
And being in recovery area for a long time, that's always been prayer and meditation, whatever. So the meditation piece has always been a tough area for me. I started to dabble with it when I started to come visit my parents here a few years before the divorce was over. They moved to Wilmington, so I started to come visit them. I started with 3 minutes. I used the Headspace app, not plugging anybody, but I started with 3 minutes at a time. I didn't really know what I was doing or couldn't imagine how it was going to help me, but I do know that 3 minutes seemed like forever. That 3 minutes has turned into... You just had Travis Mickle on here. I go to his meditation. When I moved to Wilmington, I found Fronting Life through some people, whatever. That's a good 30-minute meditation. In the last year, that has been life-changing. My mind does not quiet. It's not about finding some, whatever. But what I have found is that I'm much quicker at going into my focus on my breathing, taking a second. The mind spins a lot less. I cannot imagine not having that as a coping tool today.
You've just convinced me. I usually take 5 recommendations before I say, okay, this is something I have. Now, this one's pressed it till 7 or 8. Now, you're the 8th person that's told me that you have to go. If not going to Travis's, what is it called?
Headspace.
Headspace.
I use the Headspace app. There's a bunch
Well,
of
I mean,
them.
with Travis's class, what is that?
Fronting Life.
Fronting Life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. People have said if you don't know how to do it, you just need to go Monday nights to Travis.
Yeah. He's great at guiding, because for the most part too, I will say the meditation piece, I wanted to make it this big thing. It's really about sitting still and letting the thoughts come and not attaching myself to them. Like I wanted to make it into this big deal. I love the Fronting Life community. I like going there and laying down on the floor for 35 minutes and taking in the sounds. It's really become a comforting space that I tie in with the mental health piece. Mm-hmm. Mental health is paramount. You can't do anything without it. Can't have a relationship. Can't have a healthy anything without it.
Yeah.
And so that's been paramount. I hear 10 minutes a day. Someone will say 10 minutes can be life changing. Have a practice at it. 5 minutes. I don't meditate every day by any means. I try and keep it in. I'll sit down and listen. But I have just found it's something I'm not willing to give up anymore or go very long without.
I think that's an amazing one, and I'm definitely going to give in. The problem is I just up here, I can't shut the fuck up long enough. Mm-hmm. So I've got to figure something out on that one.
No, it's not about shutting it off. That's why I do find either the app is helpful or something like putting yourself in the setting, because it's just being there. Mm-hmm. Let the noise take place. Take notice of the thoughts. That's the beginning. You're not going to start with all of a sudden anything being quiet. It is a practice that is about the progressive process. So you just got to put yourself in it.
VR, like I'm such a big nerd, and I try to give my kids all the coolest toys in the world when I can afford them. But each of them, we all have like a VR headset. Mm-hmm. And my middle got one of the fancy ones, saved up for a year, bought it for himself. One of the fancy ones, but there's these meditation apps in there that are, because it's color pass through. Mm-hmm. And then there's like little like trail. Now, back in the day, I had a roommate that used to dose me with LSD every day, not to have to pay rent. So even during the summer, I get little trails that happen while I'm cutting the grass. But it's kind of like that kind of happens around you. Then the whole room kind of goes dark after a while. And this was gorgeous, like meditation, just sounds, and it's so relaxing. And I got done with that, and I'm like, man, this is great. Yep. And then, I saw the normal things, like a cat pissing outside the litter box, like my daughter, going, hey, Dad, what's this? Crack. And I'm like, oh, that was something I needed. And then all that, of course, went out the window. But I appreciate you saying I'm definitely going to, you just convinced me on that one. I could see it in your eyes that you were truly being passionate about that. Yeah. And I'm going to try it.
Yay.
Question 2 here. What is one characteristic that you still have from the days when you drank or used or whatever, that when you have that pop up, you're like, oh, shit, there she is. All right. And when you realize that, how do you battle, cope, or dismiss?
So I'm going to tie this back to, I'll say without going into it too much, like the 12-step process. I'm super appreciative for it. And in one section, you start to look at character defects or, that kind of stuff. And they used to be my coping mechanisms. So I'll always go to, I have 4 serious character defects: I'm selfish, self-seeking, dishonest, and afraid. Through that process, I've been able to look at myself with some truth. My most glaring defective character, for lack of a better term, is I'm pretty self-seeking. Mm-hmm. And when things are not the way I want them to be, or people are not doing what I want them to do, and as mentioned, I'm living with Mom, Dad, and the brother right now.
Oh yeah, so I'm sure that happens daily.
Yeah, exactly. Pretty much all the time. And through the majority of my life, when those things took place, of course, old behavior would have been, use something to make that stuff go away. So today, I am still self-seeking, and life is generally not the way I want it to be. People are not doing what I want them to do. Driving in the traffic, it's the easiest way to practice it, the traffic and the weather.
Oh, yeah.
I find that because of my practice of behavior, like changing that behavior within me, it's much easier. I really do laugh at myself. I can see myself seeking behavior pretty quickly, and I ask for a lot of direction of thinking. I guess that's where I go with it. I'm really willing to, and I'll call that my connection with the higher power.
Yeah.
It's really important for me to get out of Angie's head, or get the, really focus on the thoughts that I have going on. And I ask for some pretty regular assistance from the universe to direct my thinking. Because what I have found is I don't want things to be the way I want them to be.
Right.
That's a huge place. That's growth for me. I do not want what Angie wants. Thank goodness I have not gotten what I wanted, because I would have been dead a long time ago. And I did get some of the things that I wanted.
Right.
They did not work out in my favor. And I will laugh. I am a huge live music fan, and I tried to get a few tickets to some things, and forced the situation. It did not go the way I wanted it to, and I've come to find, all right, slow down. So really, asking for some direction of thinking, because that idea of self-seeking, I heard it said somewhere, and this is not meant to be crass, shit breaks and people die.
Yeah.
And those are two things I'm never going to get out of, and those are two things that are going to happen pretty regularly. So when that happens, that self-seeking part of me is going to really kick in pretty quick. This is not what I want. Things are not happening the way I want. And I don't want to, what I want to be able to do is sit in a place of acceptance, of moving through the experience and navigating my way through it at a level of, like, I drove here today. There was a shitload of traffic. I don't know where all those people are. I thought about, I don't know where everyone's going. It was like 11:45 on, what is today? Friday. But I've come so far that I sat in the car and I listened to Michael Singer, and I thought about this interview, and I really did not have one bit of anger or frustration rise up in me. That's
good.
That's that surrender, and that's come with practice for sure. Now I drive with my mom and dad, and they're bitching about the traffic, and everyone's really having an issue with the way life is. I don't want that. So that self-seeking part of me, that comes up, and it comes up every day. I ask for some direction of thinking.
You know how when you go to, it's like a cliche as fuck thing, you go to a meeting and you're like, man, I needed to hear all of that today.
Yep.
I needed to hear that today, because if something's not the way I want it, like, I have to walk away from the situation just to not be a dick.
Yep.
Because this little silver tongue likes to hurt feelings if I can't control it. And that's what I needed to hear today. Because actually, as you were talking that, I honestly I was listening. I heard every word. But there was something that I was dealing with all day that I was just like, Angie's absolutely right. That person doesn't need this shit. They don't, thank you. I needed that.
You're welcome.
You've been just wonderful. I have to ask you this last question. This is my favorite, because I love to see and hear people talk about this, because sometimes we don't acknowledge these things a little bit, but you can think about your entire life in 4 seconds, just like a dream. You can have a dream a month that you're the president of the United States, and then blah, blah, blah happens. That's all 5 seconds. Thinking about everything that you can remember, as far as you can remember, everything you've been through to where you're sitting right now, what are you the most proud of?
I am going to say I'm really proud of the fact that I have continued to grow my spiritual life and stay on this path of recovery. It's been intensely uncomfortable. It has, I've gotten judged by family members. My sobriety makes other people uncomfortable. And my marriage, it really was. I did not get married to get divorced.
Yeah.
And so I don't want to say pride. I did not do it myself. Sometimes I wonder, why me? I know a lot of other people are on the journey. I want it. I don't ever want to be drunk again. That alone. So the fact that I have been willing to continue to become authentic Angie not give a shit about what other people think of me. Within reason, I'm human. But I am proud of myself for having a willingness to continue to share this part of my life. You know, I had one political stint in the town I was talking about before. I served on the town council of this little town, Red Cliff community. And so I think, you know, I have no skeletons in my closet.
Right.
If anyone wants, if I'm ever going to run for political office again, here it is. If I don't get it, that's fine. But I am proud of my my willingness to continue to understand that this is the best thing I can do for me at the top of my list, best thing I can do for my family, best thing I can do for my dogs, best thing I can do for society, all of it. I am proud of it. You know, I don't think I'll go out. I don't know.
Yeah.
At this point, doesn't necessarily matter, but what I have completed at this point in my life, making the amends, doing the work to the best of my ability, cleaning up my stuff, taking ownership that's not easy stuff. I know a ton of people who've done it. It's not an easy path to take by any means. The willingness to practice humility that comes for me with recovery. It's like letting the husband go, letting him, you know, I fought it to a certain extent, but letting other people have their lives and do their thing and pay attention to my mental health. It's like, man, I wish the world would do that. Imagine if we were all paying attention to our mental health.
Yeah.
Not worried about what everybody else was doing. It would be beautiful.
And it's the ones that worry about everybody else that really need to pay attention to their mental health.
Because it's always easier to focus on the other person.
Oh, yeah.
But,
no, absolutely. It sounds like to me that you have really and amazingly and impressively put in a lot of work to become a fantastic version of yourself. I would say the best version, but only you can decide whether it's the best version.
This is definitely the best version today. So far, progressively each day, this is the best version of myself. And I usually say, I'm like, and if you don't like it, you know, you can all whatever.
Kick damn rocks,
yeah, exactly. This is easily the best version of me. Yeah.
I love it. And, you know, I hope that everybody can kind of, or anybody can at least, and I'm sure there's going to be something in here that at least one person can grab that can make their life better to think about. And I appreciate it. Travis, you were spot on, good sir. Thank you for sending Angie to me. I appreciate it. You
Absolutely.
made my day. Thank you
you
so very
you made
much.
my day.
Enough to make you press rewind. Creation divine, don't waste your time between the lines. We never have stepping. Truth is a powerful weapon. Spreading good vibes to the people. What we bringing when we step in prime time. Last line, hot enough to make you press rewind. In time you'll find that everything will be just fine. Hype a finger on the button as I sit in the control room. And I put the truth upon the youth at an elevated volume.
Making me laugh, man.